Welcome back to another Silicon Dojo question and answer session. So basically I'm now doing question and answer videos here on this particular channel. So all you have to do if you want your question answered by me is put your question down in the comment section. Every day I go through, find a question that I think is valuable, and I answer that question. So this question comes from HW. You talk a lot about networking. Why do you think it is so important? So when this person is talking about networking, he is talking about business networking. He's not talking about TCP/IP or 5G or something like that. And business networking is basically where you go out with your big old stack of business cards and say, computer repair, computer repair, computer repair, computer repair. Free to the end user hands-on computer training, free to the end user hands-on computer training. Would you like free to the end user hands-on computer training? And you go out there and you try to dig up resources, you try to create relationships, you try to get contacts, you try to build the mythical Rolodex. So why do I think networking is important? Well, networking is important just from a general sense, because in order to sell your product or service to somebody, people need to know that your product or service actually exists. Now, an important thing to understand in the business world is that you only have two actual resources, right? When people look at a business, they think the business has all kinds of resources, real estate and technical infrastructure and employees and all that kind of stuff. And the thing is really when you're a business person, it all just comes down to two actual resources that you have. You have time and you have money. Those are the only two resources for you. And so basically when you're starting in your business, you most likely have far more time than you have money. And so trying to figure out ways to do cost-effective advertising is very important, right? Now, if you go out and it takes you 8 hours to get one new customer, that's not necessarily a bad return on investment, because that 8 hours of work, Remember as a business owner, you do not get minimum wage. That's right, boys and girls. You can work 100 hours a week and lose money as a business owner, right? So if you go out and it takes you 8 hours to get a new customer, the reality is if you don't have a lot of money in the bank, but you have a lot of time, that might be a very good return on investment. When you go out there and you start trying to buy advertising, I'm not anti-buying advertising. Believe me, Google AdWords is a godsend. Google AdWords is amazing. But, back in the day, and this was 10 years ago when I was buying a lot of Google AdWords, it cost us something like $90 per new client using Google AdWords. And that was 10 years ago. I don't even want to think what computer repair costs now for cost per click. And so it was $90 per new customer using Google AdWords, which was the most effective, cost-effective advertising that we did. Well, the thing is, when I have 9 employees, when I have a whole bunch of stuff going on, I am more than happy to throw $90 on the table for every new customer that walks in. That's something that I can budget for, right? I have very little time to deal with being able to bring customers in, and back then, a chunk of money to deal with it, right? So basically, you spend a lot of money when you have a little bit of time, but when you have a little bit of money and you have a lot of time, it's better to go out there and actually schmooze with people and try to bring people in that way. So the first reason that business networking is very valuable for you is just it can be a very cost-effective form of advertising, especially when you're starting out. The other valuable thing with business networking, one of the reasons that everybody should do at least a little bit of business networking is business networking. Most of the business networking, like groups out there or whatever, have the same horrible shtick, right? You go there, everybody hands out their business cards, everybody stands up for a minute and says their dumbass elevator pitch that nobody else cares about, and then you go around and you talk and you have conversations. Now, for a lot of business networking, to be clear, a lot of business networking on the face of it is worthless. But again, one thing you have to be thinking about, one of the things that I try to bring to the table is there is what is worthless on the face of it and can actually be very valuable to you in ways that you don't yet realize. But going to business networking and being forced, give it a minute. So I actually just went to a business networking thing over that way in Asheville. You're given a minute. So there were 14 people in the room. Everybody had a minute. They literally had to stand up. They literally had to give their elevator pitch. And then there was a buzzer. If you went over the minute, you got a buzzer and you're told to sit the hell down. right? And so one of the valuable things with going to a business networking, whether or not you get customers, whether or not you get clients, whether or not you get any value out of it at all, is that it forces you to get good at an elevator pitch. And one of the most valuable things for you when you're learning how to speak, when you're learning how to do elevator pitches, is to get up in front of people and actually give your elevator pitch. And here's the thing. It's not the criticism from the people that are watching you that is going to make you better generally. Is that when you stand up and you do your spiel and then you listen to the crap that comes out of your mouth, you're going to be like, wow, yeah, I need to work on this. I did it. I said something, got up for a minute and I said something, but damn, that didn't even make sense to me, and I'm running this damn business, right? So one of the valuable things with the business networking is it forces you to get used to that elevator pitch. When somebody comes up to you and asks you, what is it that you do, you can just sit there and go, look, I do free to the end user hands-on technology education, down here in Nashville. Yeah, we got a little classroom going on where we're looking to expand to about 1,000 square foot classroom in the near future. But yeah, basically the idea, people can come in, they can work on different projects, build things with a stuff called Arduino, teach them how to deal with servers and the stuff called IoT and blah blah blah, and you get used to having the conversation, the being able to say what the hell it is that you do. Because here's the thing, here's the biggest thing. If you can't explain what it is that you do, nobody's gonna want to buy it because they don't get it, right? It's like, well, I don't understand. What is it you do now? Right? So one of the valuable things with going to business networking is it gets you into that. The other thing with business networking is it gets you used to talking with people. Again, I am a full-fledged Aspie. I know you may not realize it because I seem so normal. And everybody knows it's completely normal for people to sit here and talk into cameras for 3 to 4 hours a day. It's the most normal thing in the world for a man to talk to absolutely nobody while he's recorded for 4 hours a day. But anyways, I am an Aspie, whether or not you believe it. And one of the big problems for me back when I was 17 and 18, going out in the real world, is I realized that if I did not get better with interacting with people, my life was going to be miserable, right? I was incredibly nervous, I was incredibly shy, I was incredibly sheepish, just tongue-tied and the whole 9 yards. And so one of the things that I did, as I've told you folks, back when I was 17 through, 20 some odd, is I used to do poetry readings, right? Poetry readings were the big thing in the early 90s. So it's like, I have to get better with talking in front of people, with just being out there. So I'm going to do poetry readings. Oh, it went horribly. The first couple of times was so horrible. But then afterwards, it wasn't too bad. I was never the greatest poetry reader, but I got good enough, and now I can do this kind of thing. And so one of the valuable things about going to business networking is, especially with a lot of young people and a lot of shy people, and a lot of people somewhere on the spectrum, is interacting with people can be very difficult. Well, guess what? If you never push yourself, if you never try to learn how to do anything, any kind of skill, you're never going to get better at it. So one of the valuable things about going to these business networking meetups is you get to go there. And then all you have to do, if you're really shy, you're really sheepish, I get it. I'm patting you on the head. You're doing good. But what I want you to do is I want you to go to one of these business networking meetups, and the first time you go there, all I want you to do is find somebody to talk to. Somebody. And what I want you to do is I want you to talk to that person, and then I want you to understand what they do enough that you can come home to your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever else, your mom or your dad, your best friend or whoever, and I want you to be able to explain to that person what it is the person that you talk to does. All right, so the first time that you're going to go, you're like, hi, I'm a computer guy, what do you do? And then it's gonna be miserable. It's gonna be miserable. And then the second time you go, it's still gonna be miserable. Fifth time you go, it'll be slightly less miserable. It'll be kind of like a bored misery. Like it'll be a misery, but you've already done enough times at this point that you're kind of getting bored with being miserable. And here's the thing, by like the 20th time of just going and doing this type of thing, you're just gonna get more used to talking with people. Hey, so what are you doing? Oh, that's very interesting. Again, you get used to your elevator. But yeah, what I do is, and basically it's a skill of having a conversation with people, asking what they do, telling them what you do. so that you can create the relationship. And that's one of the big things with doing business networking, especially for young people, is basically the idea of being able to formulate what the hell your elevator pitch is and actually do it and refine it in front of people, and then going there and schmoozing and learning about other people. And the thing is, why I want you to learn what other people do is, frankly, to find out what you find interesting and what you don't. When you're sitting there and you're talking with somebody, figure out, listen to what's happening, look at them, see what makes you attracted to their idea and what makes you attracted to wanting to be around them and what repulses you from wanting to be around them, right? As they say, a smart man learns from their own mistakes, a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So when you sit there and you're having conversations with people, you're going to realize the people are like, wow, these folks are, this person's good at selling. I want to learn more about how they sell. You're going to talk to somebody else and you're like, oh my golly, this is horrible. I can't stand to listen to this person's elevator pitch. I sure as hell don't want to hire them for anything and have to deal with them for the next year, right? And so that's some of the stuff to be thinking about when you're just initially doing the business networking. Now, past that basic skill set, then the question then becomes is what is the real value of business networking? What is the actual ROI, especially for somebody like me with business networking? So I've done business networking a number of different times at this point. I initially did business networking by pounding the pavement and handing out cards. That's right, the salespeople won't tell you this. The B&I people won't tell you this. But business networking, if you just go into your local business district, if you have some kind of service that you sell to businesses, and you knock on doors and you hand out your promotional material, that is actually a fantastic way to get customers. Again, for me, back in the day when I was doing consulting, I found for every 3 hours of pounding the pavement, I got one customer. Now, sometimes I got 3 customers in 1 hour, which was awesome. Sometimes, you know, that 1 hour was the 11th hour of me doing pounding the pavement. But one thing to be thinking about with business networking is to remember, when we talk about things like networking, we really got to think about like what is the core concept of what we're doing. And the core concept of what we're doing is we're communicating with other people and essentially asking them, do they need our product or service? So first time I did business networking was just knocking on doors and handing out flyers, which I have to say is an absolutely terrific way of doing it. Past that, I got wrapped up into the business networking world for 2 different reasons. The first was I was still running my consulting company, and I was told by people that I should do business networking. So I hadn't done real business networking before. I hadn't done BNIs. I hadn't done these networking events. I had foolishly knocked on doors and handed out my business cards. Au contraire, that's not business networking. Again, this was in my younger years. This is one of the reasons why I get frustrated with so many people, is I was doing something that had an incredible ROI, that was doing very well, and then I listened to failures, to be honest with you, people that were failing as they told me I was doing it wrong. So I was like, oh, maybe I should do this business networking thing. And so one of the things is I did a lot of this business networking, again, the B&I type stuff, going to these networking breakfasts and those kind of things. And basically for that, I essentially walked out with nothing. One of the big problems I had when I was doing most of this normal business networking, especially when I was in the Baltimore area. So when I was in the Baltimore area, I already had a Rolodex. When I was in the Baltimore area, I already had clients. When I was in the Baltimore area, I already had resources, right? I needed specific people that actually wanted to buy my product. That was the only people I really needed to talk to. And one of the issues you get to with a lot of these business networking groups is essentially you have a bunch of salespeople for multi-level marketing things. It's not really multi-level marketing, but it might as well be. Again, the thing of the name, it's not exactly MLM, but it's close enough to call it MLM. You have a lot of people selling credit card processing, people selling Aflac insurance, people selling, IRAs, or all these weird ass different services. And one of the big problems you run into is essentially you have a bunch of salespeople in a room all trying to sell to other salespeople. So I would be the one decision maker. I would be the one person in there that actually had employees and actually had to pay the mortgage and all that kind of stuff for my building. And then I'd be surrounded by 20 Aflac salesmen, essentially. And so one of the things that I found with most of that business networking is I spent about a year or 2 doing that type of business networking, and it was essentially worthless for me. I'm not really sure I got any customers. Like out of as much effort as I put into it, I didn't really get much, because again, I was at that point I was looking for business clients. These are all the salespeople for and they're like very tangentially, connected even to the businesses that they supposedly are employed by. And so I didn't get any hot leads. I didn't get any cold leads. I barely got any sales. So we may have gotten some antivirus repairs, but it definitely wasn't worth the time. And so that's one of the things to be thinking about with business networking is asking yourself, when you go into a room, are the people in that room actually going to be able to provide you with whatever it is that you need? Like, there's an ask. What is your ask? And can anybody there actually give you what the hell you're asking for? So I'm doing business networking now. We're going to talk about that in a moment. And that's actually going pretty successfully here for me in Asheville. But because my ask has changed, right? When I had my store before, I already had a store. I already had facilities. I already had all I needed was customers. Customers was all I needed. And so when the ask was customers, and I'm basically talking to a whole bunch of salespeople, right, that completely failed. So one of the things you have to think about is, what is your ask going into the situation? And then is anybody in that room actually going to be able to supply you with anything that you need? And a lot of the problems with most of these business networking groups is the answer is no. It's a whole bunch of salespeople all trying to sell to each other. Again, it's a whole bunch of people that think they're entrepreneurs. Again, entrepreneurship has gotten very weird. Again, if you ever listen to Gary Vaynerchuk and I are somewhere near the same age. And again, I went through the entrepreneurship program for my high school. So I went through something called DECA, Distributed Education Clubs of America. It was actually a vocational program. My senior year, I only had to go to 3 classes in the morning. The rest was doing business stuff in the afternoon. And it was not a competitive program. Let me be clear. I was actually pretty good at the whole entrepreneurship thing, so I probably could have gotten in if it was a competitive program. But it was not a competitive program. Basically, they were just hoping enough people showed up every year so that they kept their funding. I don't know what the hell has happened over the past 30 years, but entrepreneurship used to be that thing for weirdos. Kind of like comic. You ever notice that? Like comic books and Dungeons and Dragons and video games and entrepreneurship? That crap used to be for weirdos. And now all of a sudden, it's what the popular cool kids are doing. And the problem you get into, right, is that you have a lot of folks that are trying to, like, they want that name of entrepreneur, right? Being an entrepreneur is facilities. Being an entrepreneur is advertising. Being an entrepreneur is all this stuff. It's just tedious. Again, what happens when the toilet gets backed up? That's the entrepreneur's problem too. But you have a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs. And so, with a lot of these events, again, Aflac salespeople, those types of things. And so they're given a business card, they get a 1099, and they consider themselves entrepreneurs. It's kind of like Uber people, like Uber drivers and Lyft drivers. Nothing against them, but they're not entrepreneurs. They're basically employees under a very bad taxation system. Right? Because again, if you're an entrepreneur, the entire concept should be, like, if you're a subcontractor, you're an entrepreneur, the concept should be that you should be able to get to the point that you can hire employees, that you should be able to get to the point that you can rent facilities, that you should be able to get to the point that you can actually have a real business. When I dealt with my subcontractors that did cabling, right, I may have gotten, let's say, $150 to do a cable run. They may have gotten $50 to do, and then I subcontracted them to do $50 for the cable run. That seems like a lot less, but realize they don't have advertising costs. They don't have to deal with the customer service issues. They don't have to deal with the sales process. So basically what I'm saying is, here, do this work. All you have to do is run the cable from point A to point B, terminate it, make sure it tests properly, and you get to walk the hell away. I have to deal with getting payment from the customer. I have to deal with getting the customer. I have to deal with the sales process. I have to deal with the contract process. I have to deal with the entire project, right? And so you have subcontractors. It seems like they're not making very much money, but since they get to eliminate all that additional crap that goes along with the business, then they can start working really hard, and then once they get to a point, then they can hire staff, and then they can get vehicles, and then they can grow a facility, and all of a sudden you have a subcontracting company that is a full-fledged company. Again, when you look at Lyft drivers, when you look at Uber drivers, when you look at Aflac salespeople, the reality is they're not going to be hiring anybody. Maybe they'll be hiring an assistant. Who the hell knows? But that's about it. So one of the problems you get to with a lot of these business networking groups is simply that there's nobody there that you can sell to. And so this is one of those things you have to think about, right? If there's no decision makers in the room and you need somebody to make a decision, how is that going to work out? So that was the mess when I first did business networking, and basically it was more or less a worthless failure for me. Didn't get all that business networking that I did. Yeah, I don't think I have anything. I don't think I have anything to this day to show, like, at all. I don't even have funny stories. I don't even have funny stories from it. Some sad stories probably, but not funny ones. Anyways, then I started doing the technology networking, right? So this is when I talk about, there's something called the Greater Baltimore Tech Council. This is where I talk about tech breakfast. This is where I talk about, going to JavaScript meetups and all of those kind of things. So the problem that I found is I just wasn't in a position to actually gain value out of what was being offered, right? So one of the big problems you run into sometimes is just mismatch, right? Target audience mismatch. The target and the audience necessarily aren't the same. And so the thing was, I went to a lot of these tech meetups in the Baltimore area, and I met a lot of great people, and I do have a lot of great stories and that type of thing. But the issue is, at that point, I was doing the YouTube videos, and so for me, like, I was looking for advertisers that wanted to get to a global audience. One of the big problems that's been, especially with like the Baltimore startup scene, is, in order to go for a global audience, you actually have to have a product. You have to have a whole bunch of other things. And so a lot of people that I was dealing with there, that was the big issue, is that they were just too small for kind of the context what I was trying to do, right? So the products or their services they were offering were so niche or so unknown that if I presented them on my videos, nobody cared because they didn't know what the hell they were. And on the same hand, if I went there and I said, hey, you can advertise on the content that I'm doing, they didn't have the budget or anything else. Again, they were a little bit better than the Aflac salespeople, but not a whole bunch different. And so one of the interesting things there is I had a lot of fun because I was around technology professionals, right? So again, I'm a technology entrepreneur. So when I'm around Aflac salespeople, that isn't necessarily that fun. Not necessarily that fun, not necessarily that enjoyable, because who the hell cares? If you don't have a story about plunging the poop from some homeless person that used your toilet, I don't want to talk with you, right? Anyways, so that wasn't very fun. But when I went to the tech meetups, it was actually very enjoyable. I'd sit there and I would talk with people, and I would talk with higher level people, CIOs and VPs and that type of thing, and it was pretty interesting. But again, the problem was, at the end of the day, there wasn't actually a value proposition there. I do remember that there's like one of these guys that I talk about, Ron, that I try to help out quite a bit over the years I was in the Baltimore tech scene, and many times he'd ask me, he's like, Eli, is there anything I can do for you? Like, he was actually asking, like, look, you help me, I want to help you. And I was like, yeah, no. Nothing around here I need. And again, that's one of the problems you run into with the business networking, is like, if you have an ask. So my ask is, hey, I have advertising that will get you in front of a global audience. If nobody is at a point where they need to be in front of a global audience, well, that doesn't matter. Again, one of my asks is, if I present, cool technology or whatever that's good for clickbait and SEO purposes, that's another ask. But again, most of the people that I was around, very small things that they were doing, that they had no SEO value at all. So I was in this environment, and right, I don't know, a couple of things. Again, out of all the times in the Baltimore tech scene, got a lot of great stories, made some friends. Got some tiny value out of it, but not actually huge. But one of the good things there it was interesting to go there, and again, to learn more about the startup world. I'm actually a very curious person. I know this is a shocker. As a technology person, as a technology geek, I'm actually very curious. One of the values that I did have in that environment, though, was also to learn about the startup world and to sit there and talk with folks and grasp what was actually going on. And it was actually useful for me to realize what crap that entire world was. So again, it's one of those things, like, sometimes you can be frustrated with the results, but the results can still be valuable for you. That's where I've talked about, like, I saw startup companies going off and getting accelerated basically into brick walls. I saw one, again, there was this one startup company. Again, it's one of these things that really follows me and really haunts me when we talk about social justice, and we talk about the idiocy of how social justice is being used in the modern world, where there was this one startup company had African-American founders, a number of African-American founders from Baltimore City. They actually had a good idea. I'm still pissed that it died. And they basically got accelerated. They went through two accelerators. They went through a Baltimore accelerator, and then they went through like some diversity accelerator out in California. And literally, when they came back after 6 months of acceleration, their app still didn't work. Their app still didn't work. I don't know what the hell they were doing for 6 months. And again, but that was a very valuable lesson for me. Again, when we talk about social justice, is when you talk about helping disadvantaged people, if you put them through accelerators and out the other side, their app still is literally not functional, you do have to ask yourself, what the hell is going on? And I actually take that lesson to heart. It's one of the things that Silicon Dojo is kind of built on, actually being able to teach people to do crap, right? It's not good enough to give somebody a certification. If you give an inner city black guy a certification, but they're unable to do the work that they're certified to do, that is only going to make their life more painful. How about we actually teach the person how to do the skills? Anyways, but that's its own story. But one of the interesting things there, being part of that tech scene, is I got to talk to investors. I got to talk with people that were creating startups. I got to interact with the accelerators. I got to learn a lot about what was occurring, and realize most of it is complete and utter garbage. Again, at the end of the day, you know, what's the value proposition there? Like, did I actually get a monetary return out of that? Not really. I mean, a little bit. There were some things around the edges where I got some monetary return from it. But really, for me, it was more life lessons. It's the lessons that I think about when I'm creating Silicon Dojo. Again, being in the Baltimore tech startup scene and talking to this one guy who was an African American, you know, founder, and he was a good guy. He is a computer science major. He was working for one of the major contractors in the area, and he was creating a startup. And one of the interesting things is we had a conversation one day, and he was like, well, Eli, one of my problems is when I go home at night, I can't talk about money to anybody that I'm around, right? So startups, especially back then, you need $1 million or $2 million for whatever reason, right? So he's going out there trying to raise $1 or $2 million. And then think about this. When he goes home at night, when he talks with his mom or his girlfriend or, you know, his friends or whatever else, if he talks about raising $1 million or $2 million when you're in the city, right, that's an entirely different context to people. Oh, who do you think you are? Why do you think anybody's going to give you $1 million? Think about the average person trying to get $1 million out of investors and all the pushback that they're going to get. And then, I mean, again, you go to disadvantaged areas where people aren't necessarily doing that well economically, and you start talking about how you're trying to raise millions of dollars. That becomes a questionable problem. And again, it's one of those things that we're not discussing as a society. Again, we talk about, you know, whether, you know, they talk about disadvantaged people and how they get so much less funding than white people do. But how many people have actually talked about the family conversations, about when you go home at night and when you need to talk through, when you need to think through the problems you've had during the day, and basically you're not allowed to talk about raising a ridiculous amount of money because nobody around you is going to deal with that well, right? But again, these are the kind of stories that I've taken with me, and so it was very valuable with my growth, and it was very valuable from a knowledge stance for the next thing that I would do, Silicon Dojo, but the value proposition there monetarily wasn't so great. So then you may be asking, well, Eli, well, if you know, Pounding the Pavement did well for you in the past, then why, now that you're in Asheville, you're talking about schmoozing with you know, doing business networking with the tech community here, and I've just talked about going to one of these business networking meetups. So Eli, have you just lost your mind? Are you just banging your head against the wall? If this hasn't worked very well for you in the past, why do you keep doing it? And the major reason that I'm doing it here is because I had no Rolodex. See, in Baltimore, by the time I got around to doing business networking, I already had 1,000 clients plus. I already had a Rolodex. I already had a CRM solution, right, that tracked my what. I already had basically, like, again, all I needed was customers. One of the issues here is I don't have any of that. I moved here in the middle of February, so as far as the timeline when I'm recording this, I've only been here about 3 months now. And so the reality is, I don't know anybody here. I have no Rolodex. I don't really have a hell of a lot of resources. I don't know who to call if I have a problem. I don't know what the technology industry looks like around here. There's a lot of unknowns, questions, right? And so one of the reasons that I'm going out and I'm doing these meetups here is one of the valuable asks for me is to simply understand what the technology and the business environment in the Asheville area is. What does it actually look like? When I see the price of real estate and I see, it wants to be, an office, they're offering an office for X, Y, or Z amount, being able to talk with people and start to understand what should office space in the Asheville area go for. That's a valuable thing. Being able to sit there and talk. I've been going to like the technology meetups, and talking with people and simply understanding what the coding language that's popular here is. And hey, guess what? It's PHP! Yay! But think about this, right? One of the things I've talked about many times is the requirement for technology skills is many times is geographic dependent, right? So back in the day, 2013, 2014, when web apps were really taking off, on the East Coast, PHP was the big programming language. On the West Coast, Ruby on Rails. For any snot noses out there, I know Ruby on Rails. It's Ruby is the language, Rails is the framework, but any adult just calls it Ruby on Rails. I got snagged for that with somebody like, Ruby on Rails isn't a language, that's a framework. Like, stop. Anyways, East Coast, PHP was important. West Coast, Ruby on Rails was important. Why? Just how crap works out, right? Again, how the companies that move into an area, what their core languages are, that many times determines the language that's used by other companies, right? And so one of the interesting things is going to the tech meetups here and talking with many, many, many people that own development companies, people that work for development companies, people that are consultants. Is around here, PHP is a popular programming language. Yay! So I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry so much about learning Ruby or some other programming language because PHP is already, right? So that is a valuable lesson for me. Again, going around here and finding out that WordPress development companies is apparently a big deal here. Okay, don't be snarky. Don't snark. You're not supposed to snark. But anyways, apparently the tech scene around here, really an integral component of it is WordPress development companies. So people that develop WordPress websites. But anyways, that's a useful thing to know. Again, to understand what languages are used and what technology is used in this particular area, that is a good thing. Beyond that, I went to one of these meetups and I met somebody that was interested in what I'm doing here. Again, going to the technology meetup, and now I have something to offer the locals, right? When I did YouTube videos before, I didn't really have anything to offer the locals, and the scale of doing YouTube videos is just so enormous. It doesn't matter if I get one local person to watch, right? Again, on YouTube, you get paid per CPM, per 1,000 views. So even if I go to a tech breakfast, even if I went to a tech breakfast, and even if I got every single person in that tech breakfast to go watch a video, that was still worth about $1 to me. If I got all 200 of them to go home and watch a video, that was worth $1, right? Because the scale involved with YouTube is just ridiculous. One of the interesting things is doing Silicon Dojo, the scale becomes much smaller. Simply gaining one student or a dozen, like if I could get a dozen students, that could be incredibly valuable to me for what I'm doing, right? And so if I only need to get 1 or 2 or 5 or 12 or whatever else, that is a number that going to these tech meetups and telling people what it is that I have to offer, that is actually an ask that somebody there might actually be providing me. Oh yes, my kid. So again, I did the how to be a YouTuber, and I had 2 kids. One of the people that I met at one of the meetups had kids that were interested in becoming YouTubers, and so when I had the Silicon Dojo seminar on how to be a YouTuber, I had 3 people in the audience because of that person that I knew, right? Like 3 again, and when you're doing something local, 3 is actually a valuable number. When you're doing YouTube, 3,000 barely pushes the needle. Right? And so that's a valuable thing. So going to these tech meetups and learning what it is that people need to know, learning who the players are in the area, and then simply saying, hey, this is what I'm doing here, and I'm trying to provide services that you all find to be valuable. That's a useful thing. And when I was sitting there and I was talking about that, to one of the people, they were really interested in learning about Silicon Dojo. So they actually came, like the next week, they came to Silicon Dojo. We discussed a lot of different things. We got all geeky, excited about some stuff. And then one of the things I said is, yeah, this room, this room is a bit smaller, gets a little bit claustrophobic, and so I'm trying to grow to, probably get like 1,000 square foot room. And one of the interesting things there is that's where that person said, oh, the building that I'm in, there's a building there. They're really trying to focus on tech type companies. They have a couple of 1,000 square foot rooms. So do you want me to put you in contact with the person that's renting those out? Right? Again, that's one of the things. Like when I'm here, I'm not sure how the culture works. I'm not sure how the community works. I didn't really think there's that much of a tech community. And so simply by having somebody here, seeing what I am doing and saying, hey, this is really cool. I hope that you can get in with the same building that I'm in. That is a valuable resource. Again, the ask, what are the things that I need? I need students. So by going to meetups, I've gotten a few more students. I need a bigger freaking room for my students. Talking to the person, hey, I know somebody that's renting a bigger room, so on and so forth there. And so when I go to these technology meetups, that's one of the big things, again, creating relationships and figuring out. And the nice part is now with me trying to scale down, I actually have something that's small enough, that is a small enough scale where I can make an ask of the local tech community. Then going to the business networking meetups. The business networking meetups in Asheville are basically like the business networking meetups in Baltimore. I'm thinking all business networking meetups are about the same for the pure businessmen. Again, it was interesting, so I just went to a business networking meetup. There's a nice lady there. There's a nice lady. She was like, oh, she had seen me from one of the previous ones. And she said, oh, did you get my email that I sent you? And I was like, oh. I'm like, right? I get nervous about that because if I'm trying to make contacts, if I'm trying to create relationships in the local area, you need to respond to emails when they send you emails. And she seemed like a nice lady. I was like, oh, crap. No, if I didn't respond to it, maybe something happened to it. I'm so sorry. And I looked at her, I was like, so what did you email me about? And she looked at me, and was like, oh, whether or not you need a credit card processor. And I was like, no, I don't need a credit card processor. Anywho, well, you get a lot of Aflac salespeople and such. But again, one of the things to be thinking about is, what is my current ask? What are my current asks? My current asks are real estate, my current asks are students, and my current asks are computer equipment. One of the big issues, especially if we get to that 1,000 square foot room, hopefully going to do that in the next couple of months, donorbox.org/ETCG if you want to help crowdfund this. Anyways, one of the things is I need lab equipment. When I was in Baltimore, if I wanted lab equipment, there's a dozen people I could have called. I could have gotten a whole lab full of equipment. I could have gotten more equipment than I wanted. Problem is, again, I am brand new here. I don't know who to talk to. The companies aren't quite to the scale they were in the Baltimore area. Again, you got to think about it. The Baltimore area is like 1.5 to 2 million people all told. You have Baltimore City and Washington, D.C. are only like 35 miles apart. And then you've got Northern Virginia. Like that area, there's just so much stuff going on. And so a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of computers that are getting tossed out so I can get my hands on a lot of stuff. One of the problems here is I don't know who to ask for used computers. And buying used computers, again, the more money I spend on something like a used computer, the less money I can spend on like 1,000 square feet. And so one of the things that I need is computers. And so going there, I said, okay, this is what I'm doing. So anybody here that is interested in what I'm talking about, and again, maybe their spouses would be interested, maybe their kids would be interested, so on and so forth. So the first ask is, this is the educational environment that I'm creating, if anybody's interested in coming. And then the next ask, when I went and I did my elevator page, is I said, and I really need used computer equipment. Even if you have old computers that are 10 years or more old, for what I'm doing, for what my students are doing, that is more than good enough for what we need for doing our projects. So if anybody here has any kind of used computer equipment, I would be very grateful for being able to get that equipment, and it's not going to get shredded and quote unquote recycled. It's actually going to get used. One of the cool things about that is the person I was actually talking to right to my left, he sells services that I don't actually need, but he has two laptops. He was like, you know what, we've got 2 laptops in the closet. I'd be more than happy to give them to you. And again, think about that. 2 working laptops. If I went out there, and again, you think about what it would cost you versus a valuable thing, because a lot of people are like, oh, what's the value of 2 laptops? I could buy 2 laptops. But here's the thing, in the real world, when you actually go out to buy used stuff, it gets to be more expensive than you realize. And so if I want to go out, I want to buy used laptops. Even if I didn't need something too great, again, it would probably end up costing me a couple $100 a piece. So what, $200 per laptop at least? So it cost me anywhere between $400 probably to $600 to get some crappy laptops to use in my environment, and this person is going to give them to me. So that's again, we talk about ROI, that's $400 to $600 in value I'm going to get because I went and I spent $12 on a Chinese buffet and went there and schmoozed and handed out my business card. Somebody else, as they were walking out the door, said, oh, hey, I've actually got a desktop that we don't need anymore. If you want the desktop, I'd be more than happy to give it to you. Great, there's a desktop. That desktop can be used as a server. The desktop can be used as a desktop. That desktop can be ripped apart, and people can learn. I can teach people how to swap hard drives, right? So that's three computers there that I was able to get for simply showing up and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, and if anybody here has used computers, that would be a valuable thing for me. And so I got that. Plus I got another contact. I don't know, have coffee with a person. We'll see how that one goes. But basically, that's why I'm doing the business networking here, is to start to understand what the environment looks like more. And now that I have like these asks, like things like used computers. And again, that's one of the things you have to think about. When you go to a networking event, can people give you what you're asking for? If you're trying to get an introduction to Google and you go to a local business networking event, that's probably not going to happen. If you're trying to sell, ads or sponsorships for $10,000 a pop, going to your local meetup probably isn't going to work out. But again, for somebody like me, I literally need used hardware. I don't care where the hell it comes from. Whether it comes from IBM or whether it comes from somebody's closet. Right? I'd like to get about 20 systems, right? And so by going to this and, talking with people and everything else, it's a very easy way to be able to do something like get used computer equipment and also put out the advertising, telling people that what I'm doing exists, and go from there. Once I get enough computer equipment, once I have gotten all the things that I've asked for up until this point, at that point, then most likely the business networking will fall away, because again, I don't think a lot of people there actually care about Active Directory or IoT or Raspberry Pis or that type of thing. But the asks that I have for now, they can fulfill. So these are just some of the things to be thinking about with the whole business networking thing. Now, for some of you, you may be in the situation where you're like, well, I'm like Eli in Baltimore. I've already been here for so long, and I already know so much, I don't really need to do networking. But one of the questions to ask yourself is, do you know the people, and do you know how to get the resources you need to get? Just because you've lived in an area for 20 years, if you're just becoming an entrepreneur, that doesn't mean you know who to talk to in order to rent real estate. That doesn't mean you know who to talk to in order to get HR services. That doesn't mean you know who to talk to, again, in order to learn how the environment works and to get employees and all that type of thing. And so even if you've technically lived in an area for a long time, you may still want to do the business networking for a while, just to get some more information, just to get some more names in the Rolodex and go from there. Again, if you're going to be doing business networking, my advice is create relationships. So many of these people are trying to stab you with business cards. And again, remember, with a real business person, I know a lot of those what did they call them? Wantrepreneurs? Wantrepreneurs want every business card they can get their hands on. They think business cards are money. Every business card they put through the business card scanner, somehow that means they're winning. Here's the thing, at the end of the day, the only way that I get money is if somebody gives me money, right? So products and services, the whole Silicon Dojo model, I've got a whole bunch of balls in the air. We'll see how this works out, right? But the important thing is, at least for me, is I need relationships. I need people I can have conversations with. I need people that I can actually email them and say, hey, we had that conversation the other day about X, Y, or Z. You were talking about something. I think I actually need that. How can we make this happen? And again, when we talk about relationships, that means you're offering each other things that are not necessarily what you're selling. Right? Like the person that got me in touch with the place where hopefully we're going to be renting the classroom, right? They don't sell classrooms. They do an entirely different service. But it's that whole synergy thing. Okay, I'll help you. So they came here and they helped me with the idea of getting a classroom there. And at the same time, I was talking about this whole computer vision thing, and with the technology that they're working with, they were actually very interested in that computer vision component. The whole idea of doing like statistics and metrics using computer vision was actually something very interesting to them, and they hadn't thought about that before. And so it's one of those things. It's like we're trading things that aren't necessarily what our businesses actually are, but they still have value. And those are the kinds of things to be thinking about with the whole business networking deal. So anyways, that was probably a long spiel. That was probably a long spiel about business networking. I don't know. Go out there, do it. The big thing is go out there, start doing business networking. Get comfortable giving your elevator pitch. You should be half drunk, and somebody should walk up to you and say, "What do you do?" And you can just roll off the elevator pitch. If you can't do that, continue going to business networking. You need to get used to talking with people. You need to get used to creating relationships, talking with people, talking about what it is that they do, talking about where it is that they come from. Learn about the other person. Create the relationship there. Because remember, in the modern world, where everybody wants to talk. Everybody wants to talk. Nobody wants to listen. If you are the one person that is willing to listen to other people, you become the most valuable motherfucker in the room, right? Because that's the thing. Like, you go to a lot of these things, and people, what do I say? They don't talk. They don't talk when other people are talking. It doesn't mean that they're listening. It doesn't mean that they give a damn about anybody else in the room, right? So if you're the one person to actually sit there and have a conversation with a person and ask them what they do and say how that relates to what you do, ask them about their kids, ask them about this, ask them about, and actually remember the things about them and toss that back in, right? That there is a value proposition there. You now become valuable to that person because, by God, you're actually listening to them, right? It's not valuable to talk if nobody's willing to listen. Again, it's an interesting thing. It's how humans operate, currency in the human world, right? But again, you do, and the thing to think about is like, well, you're like, well, Eli, you go to one business networking thing and you create a relationship with somebody. How's that valuable? Well, because you create a relationship at this meetup, and the next meetup, and the next meetup, and the next meetup again. Now that I'm in my mid-40s, I can tell you how quickly time goes by. I remember when I was 18, and people would talk about going to med school, and 10 years of my life seemed like insane, and now that's a long damn time ago. Graduating college before you're 30 is a long time ago, right? One of the things to think about is, like, if you're doing the networking and you're creating relationships, if every time you go to a networking event, you try to create one new relationship, well, the first networking event, and the second networking event, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth, and the seventh, and even if you go to one, if you average one networking event per week, that means in a year, you've created 50 relationships. Now, are all of those relationships going to be valuable? No, of course not. But 10% of them may be incredibly valuable. And then again, one meetup per week, and you keep going another year, and then you get 50, and then you get 100, and then you get 150. Again, you get to the point when everything is kind of chugging along for you, and you don't need to go to these things anymore. But that's why it can be valuable for you. Is just going out there and then creating these relationships, figuring out how things work, going out for beers and coffee or whatever else, and learning from other folks. So yeah, that's my thoughts on business networking. That's why I'm doing business networking here. One of the things I like about the tech community in Asheville versus the tech community in Baltimore is a lot of the stuff here isn't seminar based, it's beer based. Now, don't get me wrong, Silicon Dojo is alcohol free. But when I'm not at a Silicon Dojo event, one of the things I do enjoy, so a lot of this stuff, like in the Baltimore area, whenever they did like tech meetups, it was kind of put your ass in a seat and watch a god-awful seminar. Kind of what I'm currently doing here at Silicon Dojo, because I don't have enough room for what I want to do. And that's kind of hard, right? You get to the end of a long day, you sit there, you grab some pizza, you're sitting in uncomfortable chairs watching a seminar about AI or whatever. That kind of sucks. One of the things I do like about the Asheville area is that most of these meetups are more, they're less educational and more just drinking beers and talking with folks. So they go to the local brewery, everybody grabs a beer, everybody just drinks beer and talks about things. all the way up until somebody starts talking about politics and it goes off the damn cliff. That's its own story, right? But one of the nice things here is I have found it's like kind of like one of those friendly environments. And so that's one of the other things we think about too when you think about business networking is like what you're actually trying to get out of it and how it can be enjoyable for you. So like I say, like the business networking stuff, I will probably stop doing after a number of months. Once I have drained everybody out of their used computers, after I've said the name Silicon Dojo enough times that they know it exists, I will probably stop doing that because it kind of sucks, right? You all sit in a circle or whatever, you all give your 1 minute elevator pitch, you all shut up while somebody else gives an elevator pitch, you eat your food and go away. That is going to have a limited value. One of the things I like about the tech meetups here though is since they are just kind of very informal, go grab a beer, you can go grab a beer. You can either find somebody that you already know and have a friendly conversation with somebody that you already know, catch up with them, or you can find some random person, or you can talk to somebody you already know, and they know somebody that you don't know, and they come in the conversation, and then you create a relationship with that person, all while you're drinking a beer. So I'll probably keep doing the tech meetups here long into the future, because, talking about geeky crap while I drink beer, I mean, if that's not ROI, I don't know what the hell is. So anyways, some things to be thinking about, some things to be pondering, and yeah, go to these things, learn how to do an elevator pitch, learn how to schmooze with people, and listen to ask people about themselves, and then learn what turns you off and what makes you attractive. And again, I'm not talking about a sexual sense. But when there are people when they do their elevator pitches, you're like, damn, I want one. You're like, I have no use for it. But I still want one, right? And there's other people that do an elevator pitch, and you probably actually do need what they have, but you don't want to buy it from them. And so something like learning that is a way for you to learn how to modulate, how to change how you're going about doing business. So there you go. Long form on why business networking can be valuable and why business networking can absolutely be worth a complete and utter waste of time. I would argue, again, especially if you are a new entrepreneur, if you are a new startup founder, again, you have more time than you do money, so you might as well go out there and do it. You will be surprised, let's just say you may be surprised with what you're able to get from people if you ask. Again, this hopefully this 1,000 square foot classroom, I think it's in a wonderful building. It'll be a wonderful space. It would just be a great thing. And literally, when I think about it, if I hadn't had a conversation with this guy at the tech meetup and him come here, I don't think I would have ever known about that space. I mean, I look for real estate. I look at loop.net and all those kind of things to find real estate. But that's one of those things where it's vaguely off the radar. Right, it's not that the person doesn't want to rent it, but it's not because they kind of want a specialized person in there. It's not being advertised to everywhere, because if they advertise it to everywhere, then you get into this whole legal thing about if you reject somebody from renting your space. So again, that's one of the interesting things in the world, like with the whole advertising, right? Is we will rent to any qualified applicant that knows we have something to rent. All right, that's how the real world works, boys and girls. That's how the real world works. And so, like with that, they want like a technology type environment there. And so I wouldn't know about that space if not for the conversation. So some things to think about there. If you want to support what I'm doing here, or let's see here. How should the end of these go? How should the end go? If you want to ask me a question, most importantly, as I said in the beginning, if you want to ask me a question, ask a question down in the comment section down below. I pick one question a day, more or less, and I will answer that question. Do try to be as specific as possible. Again, I do not know your situation. I do not know where the hell in the world you are, so on and so forth. More information you give me, the better. So you can ask questions down below. If you want to support Silicon Dojo, whether you want to support the actual classroom or you appreciate these question and answer videos and the other things that I'm doing, please think about throwing some money down at donorbox.org/ETCG. Link should be down below. If YouTube has screwed up that link again, donorbox.org/ETCG. YouTube is so messed up at this point, they can't even make hyperlinks work. That is not a joke. That is not a joke. If you want to do a one-on-one meeting with me, I do one-on-one meetings here in my office in Asheville, North Carolina, where we can talk about your career, we can talk about education, we can talk about what to do with technology with your business, all those types of things. I have people coming in all the way from Augusta, Georgia, and Raleigh. No joke at this point. If you want to do that, again, free to the end user, go to silicondojo.com. On the right-hand side, there is a link for one-on-one meetings. Click on that. Grab a time and go from there. I am doing these seminars for me in the timeline. I'm about to do an easy computer vision seminar using AWS and Microsoft Azure. That's going to be a pretty cool seminar. That's going to be tomorrow night. So I try to do seminars every week here, free to the end user. That's the whole point with Silicon Dojo. If you're in the area, go to Silicon Dojo, go to Meetup. Click on the Meetup, sign up. And also now I have started doing tutoring, or I'm offering tutoring. Nobody has taken me up on it yet. But if you want tutoring, if you need technology tutoring on, like, let's say CompTIA level stuff, A+, Net+, Security+, Linux+, that type of thing, again, you can sign up for a tutoring session, free to the end user. And if you want to donate, have I told you about how you can offer me some money at donorbox.org/ETCG? That is what we call an ask, boys and girls. What do I need? Money. How do I get it? You clicking that link and giving me some. Ask. If you don't ask people for what you need, they have no idea. Remember, if you're talking to God's kneecaps, God can't answer your prayers. Gotta ask the ears. Oh, that's its own internal thing. That's becoming its own little inside joke. Maybe at some point I'll have to actually do a specific video specifically talking to God's kneecaps. But anyways, with that, I have to go. I'll see you at the next video, or hopefully see you here down in Asheville, North Carolina.